Dzień dobry, witam Państwa bardzo serdecznie. Z uwagi na fakt, że mamy dzisiaj w panelu naszych gości anglojęzycznych, poprowadzimy panel w języku angielskim, dlatego jeżeli mają Państwo potrzebę, to zapraszamy do pobrania słuchawek, zestawów słuchawkowych i będzie on tłumaczony. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after the lunch break. We will today focus on the PFAS restriction and the PFAS regulation. This is particularly close to my heart. This topic is very important because it's one of the most focal point in the global agenda right now. And I would like to introduce our panelists. Let me invite to the stage Piotr Majdański, the manager in the Chemical Management Office in Antwil. The round of applause for Piotr. He also decided to speak in English, so I will not be the only one who is not the English speaking person trying to conduct this panel in English. And we also have with us Cedric Triquet, the Strategy Advocate Directorate in the Camarus Advanced Performance Material Division. Cedric is the member of the Plastic Europe Management Committee, and he will be speaking today on behalf of the Plastic Europe. We also have with us today our distinguished guest, who join us online, Ms. Eva Leinala from the OECD. Eva is Principal Administrator of Program on Risk Management. She's dealing with the good laboratory practice, mutual acceptance of data, and also the PFAS issue. We have also with us two distinguished panelists from the European Commission. Mr. Otto Liner, Senior Expert in DG GROW. Welcome you, Otto. And also Mr. Henrik Larsen, Deputy Head of Unit in the DG Environment. So, thank you for accepting the invitation for our panel today. Unfortunately, we didn't have with us Ms. Eva Rutkowska-Subot from the Dentos Law Company. Due to the unforeseen circumstances, she cannot join us today, but she sent her regards. So, maybe to setting the scene, we will be talking today about this universal PFAS restriction, which is very unique, in fact, because, as you probably know, the PFAS is not the single substance. It's actually 10,000 different substances with the multiple application, and it's characteristic because it has a carbon-fluorine bond, which is one of the most strongest bonds in the organic chemistry. So, thanks to this, it has a very unique and incredible properties, like its water resistance, oil resistance, it have a great chemical stability, temperature resistance, fire resistance, and a lot of very, very expected properties, but also to be transparent, as we was called today during the manifesto. It has also some disadvantages, let's say, and the same properties which make them so useful also make them danger, because they are very persistent. And when they are released to the environment, they can stay there for a very long time, even hundreds or 1,000 years in some cases. So, what is also very important to mention is that some of the PFAS has the ability to move for a very big distances, and that also shows us that the the idea to regulate these substances on the local level might not be so effective as we would like it to be. So, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our panelists. We have with us Eva from the OECD. Eva, the motto of the OECD is stated, better policies for better lives. So the mission of the OECD is assisting the countries in the regulation and providing the right tools to help them to regulate also the issue of PFAS. And could you please tell us more about why the PFAS are recognized as an issue of global concern and what the OECD is doing to helping the countries around the world to address these challenges better?
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel. So the OECD has been working on PFAS for around 25 years. And what precipitated the work was actually when there was the 3M voluntary phase out of PFOA in the US. And countries decided to come together at the OECD to conduct joint hazard assessments and pool the data and information that they had on PFOA and PFAS. And that started our collaborative work with countries on PFAS chemicals. And as you said, there were issues of concern for certain groups of PFAS, such as PFOA and PFAS at that time, along with the properties of persistence and bioaccumulation. From that time, we've worked on different project areas, or such as emission trends. And then in 2012, actually, we established a global PFAS group that helped support actions towards a resolution that was created under the then global framework, UN framework on chemicals, the strategic approach to international chemicals management. And within that, there was the resolution to shift to safer alternatives for PFAS and to better risk manage PFAS as well. So at the OECD, we've been working with countries and other stakeholders on things like informational reports, so terminology of PFAS, fact cards, synthesis reports on polymeric PFAS. And then also we've had a stream of work on alternatives to PFAS, so looking at different sectors and uses to try to understand which alternatives are available, are they being used, what's limiting their uptake. And then also activities on sharing risk management information between countries. That's been the focus of the work over the last decade.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva, for this overview. I'm particularly happy that you mentioned that the OECD work was started and the cooperation with you based on the SICAM resolution, because I devoted a large part of my life to this process. And to give us, can you give us also the brief overview of different approaches from the different countries and different regions, of course, except the EU, because that we will be covering in the next intervention. But how other countries tackle the issue of the PFAS?
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 examples from 3 different countries. But first, I'll start also by saying, there are several PFAS now listed on the Stockholm Convention for global phase out. So PFOA, PFAS, PFHXS, and also proposed listing for long chain PFCAs. So these are all countries who are signatories to the Stockholm Convention are phasing those PFAS out. I'll give you examples from Canada, Japan, and the United States. So Canada has had risk management approaches in place on PFAS, specifically PFCA, since the mid-2000s. and they have prohibited certain classes of PFAS for many, many years. They then moved from sort of a subgroup approach to last year when they released a draft state of PFAS report, which was a whole of class report. And that report gives the grounds for the government to manage the class of PFAS as a group under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. They also released at that time a draft risk management scope where the risk management objectives are really looking at reducing exposure to humans and emissions to the environment. Those are still draft and we're out for public comment, and the Canadian government will be finalizing those. In Japan, it's a bit different. So the activities have been focused a lot on the Stockholm Convention listed chemicals. But recently, Japan also put in place an expert group on a comprehensive strategy for PFAS. So they're looking at the broader class, at research and monitoring of these chemicals, and then based on that information, to make some new science-based response measures, including coupling this with information dissemination, risk communication to the public. Then finally, the U.S. So they have developed, you can find it on their website, a very broad number of actions under a strategic roadmap for PFAS. This includes different things like improving monitoring for some PFAS, reporting requirements, enforcement of existing regulations already in place, as aspects related to procurement, remediation, also guidance on waste management and developing drinking water standards. And particularly more closer to reach in the TSCA program, the Toxic Substances Control Act. Here they're grouping the PFAS in different subgroups and having an information gathering and assessment approach for those subgroups, where they have been issuing test orders for the companies that produce and import these chemicals to conduct studies on certain substances within these subgroups to form assessment and decision making. So really, different countries have different risk management approaches based on their regulatory structures, but they're all starting to look more and more at the whole wider class of PFAS.
Okay, thank you very much. It seems that there's really different approaches among the OECD countries how to tackle this issue, and it's also very good that you mentioned that already the most known PFAS and those which we collect the most information about and that we was most concerned about is already regulated on the global level in the Stockholm Convention. Can we now go and to Otto? Otto is a senior expert in DG Grow, and he is working in the REACH unit. So Otto, can I give you the question to give us a brief overview and really in a nutshell update about the situation on PFAS in Europe, how we are going to approach this environmental issue.
Thank you, Shimon. The EU has also been working for around 20 years on PFAS substances, and we started with the traditional approach, meaning that we addressed one substance and in certain uses, and I think the first restriction was on PFOS. But it then turned out that when that substance was banned, industry was moving to the next substance, and then we started working on the next substance, banned that substance, and so on. And it became a sort of a cat and mouse game of banning substances and then industry moving to the next one. But that process, of course, is not satisfactory, neither from an environmental perspective nor from an industrial perspective. And that actually made 5 countries, 4 member states plus Norway, to think that we should have a restriction on all PFAS in one go. Of course, it was always envisaged that this would not be a full ban, but there would be derogations possible where there are no alternatives. That proposal is now being assessed by ECHA. So this is a scientific assessment, and the process is that there is a proposal, scientific assessment, that then is brought to the Commission, and only then the Commission is working on a restriction proposal, which then is discussed with the member states in the REACH committee, and if there is a positive vote, then the Commission can adopt a restriction. But as long as the proposal is being assessed scientifically, normally the Commission does not intervene or comment the scientific process. Nevertheless, this is a particularly big restriction, and we have also seen that in the public consultation there were more than 5,600 comments. So there is a huge impact of that restriction, and already now there are a lot of reactions by industry in terms of investments, decisions, and reactions already. So the Commission knows that in this case we also need to give certain signals to reassure the markets that investments can continue or investments are being made. So this is why we have made clear that when the Commission will decide, there can be derogations where alternatives are not available and where socioeconomic costs are particularly high. Now, you can, of course, then ask, what does that mean? Alternatives are not available. And I think that is indeed the key question. For some users, I think the decision will be easy. So, for example, for Teflon pans, it is very clear that alternatives are available and that there will be a ban. For others in a more technical area, this is far from obvious, and we will need to look into the details whether for certain uses there will be alternatives or not. I think everybody who knows about alternatives in those areas knows that this is not an easy question. We are working in parallel on a number of initiatives. I think Henrik is going to talk about the essential use concept later on. We are also working on a concept that is called substitution planning, where the basic idea is that where substitution takes longer, we could give derogations, but with a sort of a deal where we say, okay, you can get more flexibility to continue using the substance, but only if you also invest in the alternatives. I'm not going to go very much in detail on those, and neither the essential use concept nor the substitution planning is actually in the current version of REACH, and it's the current version of REACH where the PFAS restriction is being proposed. But I think it's also clear that when in the end we will have to decide about which sectors will be derogated or which uses will be derogated, the Commission also has quite some leeway to decide what it is not going to restrict. So I hope I could give you in brief an idea where we stand on that proposal, and I'm happy to answer questions further.
Yes, thank you, Otto. Thank you for your input. Do you know what time frame are envisaged to, and when we could expect that, or when the Commission expect to receive the EHA proposal for the restriction?
This is still a rather difficult question. ECHA is now working down the different submissions in the public consultations, and I think it is in the interest of everybody that they do that thoroughly. They have decided to do that in packages. starting with maybe the easiest packages, and they are going to discuss another package in September, then another one in December, but it's clear that this assessment will not be finished this year. It will go well into the next year, and overall, we expect that we will probably not be able to have the restriction before 2027.
Okay, thank you, thank you. That's very useful to know at least some time frames or expected time frames, and we are completely understand that this process is now in the scrutiny of ECHA, and that the Commission is just waiting for the recommendation to start another actions. However, and of course, we also know that now we are in the process when the risk assessment committee is involved, and then we will have another socio-economical committee from ECHA side to be involved. However, having in mind that this will be such a broad and overwhelming restriction, do the Commission plan to have an additional impact assessment conducted to assess also, in addition to what SAC will propose?
This is actually not envisaged. The assessment by the Socio-Economic Assessment Committee is actually equal to an impact assessment under EU legislation. And we also think that doing some additional work might actually help to refine certain numbers, but it will not necessarily resolve the problem. I think the problem is really about how do we deal with situations where we know that we still need to have the PFAS, but where substitution takes time and is rather complex. How can we make sure that at the same time we allow continued use of PFAS where it is actually necessary, and at the same time give the necessary incentives to start the transition and to invest into alternatives. And I think that is going to be the focus of the work.
Okay, and I know that you have to go because of the delay of our panel. But let me just ask you just the very last question, and this one will be tough. There's no easy question or answer regarding PFAS, but this one is particularly hard. What about the competitiveness of the EU market? How we are going to secure our market from if we are decided to ban also the products containing PFAS, like, I don't know, clothes, carpets, electronics, and so on. So they are in many applications. How we will manage to ensure that the goods which are produced in US, Canada, China, whatever, and they are imported to EU will not contain PFAS if we ban them in Europe?
Yeah, we're very much used to difficult questions, and well, certainly there are many questions that are part in here. One thing is to get to the necessary investments, and that is certainly also an important element. And I think doing nothing would not necessarily lead to additional investments, but maybe only to the fact that we continue outdated technology. So I think it is also important to give incentives for the substitution of PFAS, also to make sure that Europe is at the forefront of the alternatives. And I think it's also important to understand that there are important business opportunities that go also with the development of new products. When we will have a ban on certain issues, well, let's take the Teflon pans as one of the examples. It's maybe an easy example. Here, I think it is of course necessary to look at imports and to make sure that PFAS containing Teflon pans will not enter the European market. Clearly, for other goods, it will be more difficult to really control. And I think we should also be honest that controlling everything in terms of presence of chemicals is not an easy task, but we will certainly do what we can to make sure that those controls are going to be possible. And we also have a lot in the planning for the REACH revision to help customs authorities to better understand chemicals language and to interlink databases so that they can do more automated controls. And there's also the intention clearly to focus enforcement projects on certain issues. And I'm sure that when there is a PFAS ban, that there will be enforcement projects on enforcing PFAS bans.
Okay, thank you very much, Otto. It's very good to be front runners. In Europe, we always try to be, but it's also good if others follows. It's rather hard to run alone in this marathon to limit PFAS. So hopefully other regions will join us in this effort, because one of the most important things to provide the competitiveness of the EU market is to provide the level playing fields for everyone. So also for those who imported goods. Thank you, Otto. We know that you have to unfortunately go, so we will miss you with our discussion. Sorry that you will not be able to hear it till the end, but we completely understand. And thank you for your time and your contribution to the panel.
Dziękuję bardzo i do widzenia.
Do widzenia. We have also with us Henrik Larsson. As I mentioned, Henrik is Deputy Head of Unit in the DG Environment. Henrik, your unit is also responsible for the recent communication from the Commission side on the essential use concept. We heard and we read in the CSS that the call to ban or eliminate all non-essential PFAS, which now is actually happening in a REACH restriction process. And in this call, we have actually two elements. First one is the PFAS itself, so it means how we define PFAS and what kind of definition we use to determine what is and what is not PFAS. Could you give us a little bit insight on that?
Yeah, thank you, and first of all, thank you for inviting me to this meeting. It's a pleasure for me to be participating. I'm sad that it's only an online participation, because I would have loved to be present in the room. Maybe I can start by giving a few words of introduction to the communication on essential use, just to explain where we are coming from and what it is we want to achieve with it. When we announced the European Green Deal and also the chemical strategy, there was a call for a sort of a reset of how we deal with chemicals in the European Union, based on the experience we've had with the implementation of REACH and also with the implementation of a number of other pieces of EU legislation that regulates chemicals in different ways. And there was some inspiration in this discussion from how a concept have been developing under the Montreal Protocol on ozone depleting substances, where in fact they referred to a concept of essential use. And one of the things that we have seen over the years in the European Union is that we are spending quite a lot of time, quite a lot of expert resources into investigating how restrict a substance that has been identified as being not sufficiently controlled, and therefore calling for legislative action. And the law, as it is, demands that we are looking into to this sort of on equal terms in all cases. And what we have seen is that in some cases we are spending a lot of resources. Particularly, we have seen it under the authorization route under REACH, where it is evidently clear that there are no alternatives, and the use is essential for society in one way or the other. And it appears to us to be wasteful to prolong an already long assessment process, and also with the associated uncertainty that surrounds it, if it is evident that the outcome of the assessment is that the use will continue to be allowed. On the other hand, we have also seen with concern that the quantity and the presence of hazardous chemicals available to normal consumers, both in substances as such, in mixtures notably, and in many cases also in consumer products, is going quite slow, and it's a political choice that it's been announced that we simply do not wish to see substances of very high concern as a general rule being present in consumer products. So the purpose of the essential use communication is to explain how this concept could be used in union law. It is imperative for me to underline that, and it's also made very clear in the communication, that the communication is setting out the principal considerations that we consider important for the use of the concept, but the concept will only have legal binding effect once it is introduced into law. So that means that if the essential use concept should have a real active meaning in REACH restriction process, for example, it would require that the REACH text is amended and a specific reference is made to essential use. But then if that were to happen, then at least the Commission position would be that the principles and the considerations from the communication would be the building ground for the application. Finally, what essential use means is that you have two legs that needs to be fulfilled in order for you to be meeting the criteria of essential use. The first thing is that it is necessary for health and safety, or that it's critical for the function of society. The second leg, which must not be forgotten and which is equally important, and it ties into what also Otto referred to under the PFAS restriction process, is whether there are acceptable alternatives available. So if something is critical for the functioning of society, but it is obvious that there are alternatives that are available, then by definition it would not meet the obligations for essential use. And likewise, if there are no alternatives available, but the use is not necessarily necessary for health and safety, or is not fulfilling any criticality for the functioning of society, it also goes that then by default the substance should not be allowed to be used. So that's in a nutshell the concept of essential use. Admittedly, the concept is quite easy to present as such, but behind it a lot of important details in each case would have to be assessed. So it's not as simple as I have set it out here, but I would invite you to actually consult the annex for the communication. You will understand better how it will be applied. And now, if you allow me just 1 minute more, you asked specifically about the definition of PFAS. And here it's important to understand, as also Otto explained, that we already have a number of restrictions under REACH concerning different versions of PFAS. But what we're talking about here today is the dossier that has been submitted by 5 countries, where they have decided that they have included a roughly around 10,000 versions of PFAS, and the major groups that are included in the scope of the assessment currently ongoing is PFAA, so perfluoroalkyl acids, and PFAA precursors and polymeric PFAS, including fluoropolymers and fluorinated gases. So it's a very, very vast array of PFAS substances which are currently under assessment, which also explains why the process, as Otto laid out, is taking much longer than is otherwise envisaged under the REACH regulation, where it does have legal deadlines, but it's simply impractical and impossible to make a proper assessment within those limits. So I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, definitely you answered my question and a few others following questions I had to you as well. However, the devil is always in the details. When we talking that there are 2 essential elements of the essential use concept. First, necessity for health and safety, or is critical for functioning of society. And second one is whether there are alternative available, because it might be alternative in one application, but not in the others. For example, there might be an alternative in the consumer product, but for example, in the industrial settings, we need very durable substance to not compromise on safetiness of the processes, for example. So it's not always easy to assess and saying whether the alternative exists or not, because it might be different for different application. And in case of such a broad restriction as PFAS, when you have, like you said, 10,000 substances with many applications, so if you multiply it, that gives you the huge number of potential application and substances. But I would like to also ask about this critical for functioning of society part, because the necessity of health and safety is quite understandable and straightforward. But what does it mean to critical for functioning of society if the substance have no alternative, but for example is used in a solar panel? Does it mean that it meet the criteria for essential use?
Yeah, thank you. First, allow me a couple of remarks to your first statement. I think it's important for me to highlight that in the communication, the concept of essential use is in essence not about the substance per se, but it's about the function the substance fulfills in certain applications. And it is quite clear that you cannot meaningfully make an assessment of whether PFAS is essential use or not. It really depends on the specific use case at hand. And Otto already made a reference to the frying pans, where it's difficult to argue that a non-stick frying pan necessarily fulfills the necessity for health and safety, or is critical for the functioning of society. And on top of that, it's evident when you go to any shops that you can buy PFAS-free, stick-free frying pans. So that's the clear case. At the other end of the spectrum, it's also clear from the information we have available now that PFAS fulfills quite important functions in industrial processes and in products which are vital for the function of society and in the political aims of a green and digital transition. For example, PFAS is used in the manufacturing of semiconductors. PFAS is used in a number of energy products which are important for phasing out greenhouse gas emissions. So in these cases, it is quite obvious that the critical for the functioning of society aspect of the essential use concept will play a very important role. In the communication, we have listed a very specific, and I hope you will agree with, telling example, which is the use of mercury in a lamp. Mercury might be used in specific lamps that are necessary in a hospital surgery theater, where the lamp gives a specific light spectrum and a quantity of light that is absolutely vital for the surgery. But you cannot argue that having that in your living room is fulfilling the same function and is equally necessary. So that goes to show that the concept shall be applied as per the use and what use the function of the substance. And I'm sorry, but can you repeat the second question, because I forgot it, to make sure that I answer you correctly.
I think you already replied to the question. I ask about this necessity of what is critical for functioning of society. So you actually cover that. Thank you, Henrik, for bringing your perspective on what is mean essential use and. How can we use this concept? And now we, of course, waiting for this concept being applied into the regulation, hoping to see it in the revised REACH version of REACH. And to be completely clear, we are not against of ban of all kind of PFAS in all application. We know that some of them are more essential, some are less essentials. For example, in PFAS in the ski wax can and the restriction in this regards might affect some winter sport enthusiasts, but it definitely not make a big challenge for the society. However, limiting the PFAS in many industrial applications could cause to serious concern and regarding the safetiness of the processes. We have with us in here in place Cedric. As I introduce you, you are here as a representative of the Plastic Europe. And you're representing the fluoropolymers sector group. And what is the special about fluoropolymers? Why are they different than other PFAS, which are already restricted, for example, under the Stockholm Convention?
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, well, indeed, fluoropolymers are falling under the large PFAS definition from OECD, even if the OECD, into its definition, which is a big paper that I encourage everyone to read, OECD mentioned also that this definition was aimed to describe a large family of products, but should not be used for regulatory or voluntary actions. So that explains also why we have together into this proposal from the 5 member states to regulate together more than 10,000 substances and products or subfamilies which have nothing to do with each other, which are very different, except the base chemistry, which is the carbon-fluorine bond. So fluoropolymers are part of this huge family. They are a subset. Maybe they represent in total something like 30 to 40 substances among the 10,000. So it's quite a small amount of product. And fluoropolymer are also quite a small portion of the polymer industry in general, of the plastic industry in general. It's really a fraction, because these are high-performance products which are used in niche application. In general, they are quite expensive, and the industry is using them where and when there is a real need. So now to come back to your question, what makes them very different to PFOA, PFOS, or those other PFAS which are already regulated under the POP Stockholm Convention? Well, it's basically their physical profile. I mean, you're talking a bit about solid products, which are described and certified by many scientific papers of being not bioaccumulative. They don't dissolve into water. They don't dissolve into the environment. They are not toxic. They are very stable. They are very inert. I mean, yes, we say they are persistent, but in the industry, this persistency is called durability. I mean, when here we are talking and we are in a conference for the chemical industry is using a lot of seals, gasket, piping, many other coatings and many other applications in the chemical industry to resist to the harsh chemical, to resist to the high temperature, and make sure a seal, a gasket is going to last for long enough in between maintenance operation to ensure safety of the operation. And this is what we call reliability. Yes, maybe it's persistency, but persistency alone is not a concern. There are plenty of other products which are persistent alone. So it has to be in combination with other properties to maybe challenge or, let's say, argue that persistency can be a problem. So once again, fluoropolymers are very safe. And the last example I can make for fluoropolymers is, if they would be toxic, why would they be qualified and approved for plenty of medical applications? Some of those medical applications are in-body implants, cardiac, heart surgery. You have a lot of fluoropolymer in those surgery because they are very safe, because they are very inert, and because they don't interact with the body tissue and the bloodstream. So that's I think, a huge difference compared to those which are under POP.
Okay, thank you very much for pointing out those differences. And to be, I would just put my hat of the advocate for the OECD right now, and I just mentioned that it's true that their definition is very broad, but they are just providing science-based policy tools, and this is to the regulator how they are going to use those tools. So actually the proposal came from 5 member states who make this proposal, and this is not definitely OECD fault. So.
No, I was not pointing OECD, I was pointing indeed the fact that these 5 member states have used this definition for regulatory, while the OECD definition states that it should not be used for regulatory purposes.
Sure. And you clearly pointed out that there is like a no or very low risk associated with the phase of using fluoropolymers. And what about their production and, of course, end of life? Because we have to take into consideration the full life cycle of the products.
Yeah, no, indeed. That's once again what this industry, the fluoropolymer industry, recognizes. It's that we are not saying that these products should not be regulated and that there is no risk at all when we look at the entire life cycle. When we look at the entire life cycle, the main potential concern lands with their manufacturing. So company like us, the fluoropolymer producer in Europe or in the world, when we make this product, how are we managing our emissions to air, to water, our solid waste, all the things which are coming out from the plant, which are not the final product. So this is where it's really critical to invest into the operation. This is what the association has committed into this manufacturing program, which has been released end of last year, which has already target to achieve emission reduction in the manufacturing by end of this year. So by end of 2024, there will be already a significant reduction of the emission impact at the European manufacturing location from fluoropolymers producers. And there is a next threshold in 2030. So that's where we say, like, this is an industry commitment. We understand it might not be enough, but this is maybe where we should focus on regulation. This is where maybe instead of going for a total ban, we should think about like more proportionated approach to regulation and to make sure we regulate the source of the potential concern, the manufacturing, and ensure that there are strict limits to emission, to what can be released to the environment, to try to reduce it to the lowest possible levels. I mean, the absolute zero, as you know, in chemistry does not exist because it will depend on what are we able to measure. And today, I was in a conference yesterday in Paris where they were saying they are now able to measure and detect at PPQ level. So you have PPB, ppm, ppb, PPQ. So wow, I mean, that was quite impressive. But when you start to search for PPQ, you will always find something. And that's where it's important to understand that we need to adapt the technology and invent or invest into the technology to get as close as possible to zero for the emission. Then the second part of your question is the end of life. There are plenty of studies which already demonstrate that most of fluoropolymers at the end of life goes through incineration of industrial product, because application of fluoropolymers that have been explained or described so far are mainly consumer application, which is a very, very small part of this market. Most of the application are industrial application. And this is where we need to make sure the end of life is well managed with indeed the recovery when it's possible for recycling. It needs close collaboration with the value chain, obviously. But there are already plenty of studies that demonstrate that when they cannot be recycled, incineration is a safe way to take care of those products at the end of life without releasing any other PFAS to the environment. Studies are available. BOA, the German environmental agency, has even released a paper earlier on this week, to describe indeed that there are plenty of scientific evidences now that shows that the incineration of fluoropolymer is possible. Now we need to go beyond that. We need to work on more for that, because if they can be recycled, for those which can be recycled, then this is what this industry, FPG, would like to work together with the different value chain in order to make sure that we can improve and just not rely only on incineration.
So the recycling is also possible?
For some of the fluoropolymers, recycling is possible. The challenge is, how do you recover them at the end of life? Huh? I mean, you take an example of cables into a car or into a plane. You need to make sure that you recover the cable, dismantle the copper from the jacketing or the different reinforced layers. These are difficult operations so that you separate the fluoropolymer and you recycle. So there are industries where it's easier. Henrik mentioned the semicon industry. In the semicon industry, I mean, into a fab, you have kilometers, tons of pipes, which are made of fluoropolymer, PFA, PTFE, FEP, or many others, depending on the chemicals that are managed. When such a fab, such a plant is dismantled, isolating these kilometers of pipes is rather easy. It's just a matter of having a close collaboration with the semicon industry to achieve these kind of things.
Yes, but collecting it from the consumer product will require more advanced tools like APR schemes and so on. So maybe we could advise to regulate in this direction. Okay, but maybe since we are already about time and we still have one more. Participant with us. I would like to direct another question to Piotr. Piotr, I'm really happy that you decided to join our today panel because you are representing here the Anvil, the company who do not, according to my knowledge, do not produce any PFAS, because you mostly produce the fertilizers and the PVC plastic. Or you also not added any PFAS to your final product. However, you still have some concern regarding the ongoing universal PFAS restriction. Could you describe us what actually, from your perspective, is your main concern and how it could affect your processes?
Okay, so First of all, I would like to thank the conference organizer to inviting me and to give me the opportunity to share the concern with other participants here today. And I also hope that the time allow me to emphasize the issue in regards to the great uncertainty laid down by the potential restriction process PFAS. As you answer to your question, yes, indeed, God bless, we are not the producer of PFAS substances. However, we noted down a lot of challenge in regards to the, in regards to the whole process of the potential restriction. So before I start, Szymon, please interrupt me if I cross the time limit because the subject is very extended, okay? So before I start, I have to, I must go back to the REACH begins, which introduce revolutionized, not evolutionized changes to the company through the restriction process. However, after many years, I thought that the both parties, namely the European Chemical Agency and the chemical sector industry, have learned to cooperate and coexist to each other in case of substance of concern and necessary time for searching for the industry for one-to-one safe and effective alternative which might be used for, in these sectors. But until recently, I am not quite sure about this, and in my opinion, we now face a so-called game changer during the game laid down by this new proposal for the restriction of, I highlighted, more than 10,000 substances. So what are the differences between the current restriction process and the previous one? What are the difference in their scope to each other? So the first main issue and main risk I noted down is that the policy, one substance of concern, one assessment, has been changed into thousands of substances into one assessment. So it seems a little bit revolutionized to myself, and I guess we all agree on this, that this is a little bit strange and game changer. It was also here confirmed today that there is a huge lack of information about the sectors of application. So the previous restriction have well-known sectors of application, and currently we are now looking for these sectors of application which the PFAS may be used. I hope I will have a little bit time later on to discuss the matter as well, okay? Next risk we have noted down is based on the overtime laid down during the whole process, namely the transitional period of time for the PFAS restriction is depending on whether a substance have an effective and safe alternative which enable to one-in-one replacement. But I still don't know, and I didn't find the answer today. Who will finally decide about the safeness of the alternative? Who are going to take the decision and take the responsibilities for this? It is now very easy to discuss in theory. In theory, everything could have an alternative, but we now speak about huge scale of chemical, which could at the end of the game increase the risk of major accidents on the chemical plants. This shall be discussed. And at last point, but not least, is of course, as I mentioned it, the safety of the alternatives. I hope the current environment, taking into account the broken chains, the high energy prices, the lack of raw materials, is not the best opportunity to start the next revolution in the chemical sector. So that's all from me now.
Yes, we need evolution, not a revolution. That's the phrase which is often repeated. And I also heard that the similar opinion that this single restriction is even more challenging than the REACH itself for the industry.
Yes, indeed.
But I have one more question for you. was able to go to all the processes you have in your company to assess where do you have a PFAS, to make sure that in case there will be the ban of the PFAS in product, then you will, because you rely on the replacement parts in your processes, in your installations, and how to ensure the continuation of the processes.
Because we crossed the time limit, Szymon, I will answer very briefly. We still don't know. No, it's not my answer. Yes, it is not so easy. Yes, however, there is no any problem in the supplying chain to identify substance as such or substance in the mixture because of the very necessary, very useful tool, namely safety data sheet. If we go to the safety data sheet, in one of the part, namely section 3, we have the chemical composition. So this is very easy to find. What is the composition of any substance and mixture we used on the plant? So currently we have identified, of course, the F-gases. Of course, we have identified foaming agent for the firefighters team. However, if we go to the articles subject, this situation is much more complex because, as we all know, the scope of information in regards to the article is very limited because of lack of the safety data sheet for this. So in consequence, if we ask our supplier about the content of the potential content of PFAS in articles as such, the most reply from them is we don't know. We have to check it. We have to ask our suppliers for other articles because we are using a lot of equipments which contain articles from article, yes? So it's a very complex issue. And currently, if you ask me, and probably the most chemical sectors, how many PFAS articles you use, the answer will be the same as mine. We still don't know. We are working on improving and checking this situation.
Yeah, yes, definitely. In the complexity of this supply chains and the complexity of the product itself, it's really hard to assess. But you mentioned the F-gases, and I promise, I know that we crossed the time limit, but this is really the last question, and it's a very important one, because it's also showing the issue of the safetiness of the process. You actually use the F-gases in your installation, and
yes,
there is an alternative.
With huge amount, yes, of course.
And there is an alternative for it, yes? But this alternative is...
Yes, I fully agree with you. Thank you for your previous confirmation and previous information. Yes, now we are talking about replacing F-gases who are in the closed system, who are completely safe. The only classification is the persistency of these gases, and the only one acceptable alternative is, an example, propylene or ammonium hydrose as a cooling agent in closed systems. However, we have bear in mind that we put into installation chemicals in huge amount which are flammable or toxic for the workers via, for example, as ammonium hydrose is mentioned, via the inhalation route. Yes, so I do not see any point behind, and to be honest, I do not see any advantages to make the replacement only because the replacement are known right now. In my opinion, there is no, the safety reason is not a disgusting matter. So in case that the alternatives are not safe enough for the industry, the essential use policy shall apply.
Thank you very much for this this thought. Let's have it.
I hope I will have the opportunity the next time to discuss it more in the detail. Yes.
I see that you. Yeah, we could talk about the PFAS for hours. As you see, we're all passionate about the topic. However, we are constantly we are actually over the time. So I would like to thank my distinguished panelists for their participation. Thank you for your insights, and also thanks for the panelists which join us online for your time and for your contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.